You're listening to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast, episode number 90. Welcome to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. I'm your host, Paula Price, lawyer turned certified executive coach. This podcast was created to empower women lawyers just like you to create a life and practice you love. Join me every week for a break from the hustle so we can focus on you, what you truly want, and how you can create it. If you're over the overwhelm, done with putting out fires, and ready to redefine success on your own terms, you're in the right place. Ready for today's episode? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. It's Paula here, and I'm so excited to be joined today by Louise Brogan. She is a very, very special guest. We are connected via Zoom. Louise, I believe you're in Belfast. Is that right?
Yes, Belfast in Northern Ireland.
Belfast, Northern Ireland, which is amazing. And she's so delightful. Louise, of course, you probably want to know more about her than where she's located and the fact that she's amazing. She is a LinkedIn marketing specialist for professional services companies. And Louise has over a decade of experience supporting small businesses who want to leverage social media for business. And as you probably gathered from the title of this podcast episode, we're going to be talking specifically about LinkedIn. Louise is an international speaker, writer, and host of her own podcast, which is called LinkedIn with Louise. And she also has a YouTube channel, which I understand goes by the same name. Louise lives at home with her husband, 3 children, and an energetic spaniel called Bruce. And what Louise wasn't expecting is before we hit the record button, I asked Louise for a bit of parenting advice. So thank you, Louise, for helping me navigate those challenges. Louise, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about the work that you do?
Yes. Oh, Paul, I'm just delighted that we managed to connect and organize this podcast together. And I'm always up for giving parenting advice across the Atlantic to anybody who's looking for it.
Beautiful. And I should mention it's Friday the 13th that we're recording. So it's a very special day for parenting advice everywhere.
That's maybe why our school was off today. Maybe they thought maybe it's just safer to keep everybody at home.
The teachers knew.
Yes. So I live in Northern Ireland. I have my business, like everybody's business, when you're an entrepreneur, has shifted and changed over the years. And I niched down about the last 4 or 5 years to work specifically on LinkedIn. And in the last 18 months, my business has become a boutique marketing agency. So we basically do done for you LinkedIn for professional services clients. So for those companies that are not quite big enough to have their own marketing department, but big enough to be able to outsource their LinkedIn content creation and management. That's what we do. I also wear a hat as a small business champion here in the UK. I'm very passionate about supporting small businesses, and I run local networking events and do webinars for small businesses. And something when I retire from my business, Paula, I want to go around encouraging women to start businesses. You know, that's going to be where you'll find me when I'm 75. Going, yes, you can do it.
Beautiful. And hopefully I'll be right there alongside you. I love that. A couple of things I wanted to touch on in your, what you just said. Number one is this idea of continually refining. And so now, as you mentioned, you're doing LinkedIn, you're working with professional services. And one of the reasons that we connected is that you're doing a series in your podcast about working with lawyers in particular. And so super excited for us to dive in and to really get specific, right? Like not just the marketing and the LinkedIn, but professional services and specifically lawyers. So I think this is going to be a really great opportunity for us to talk about topics that are highly relevant to the listeners today. And another thing that I am so curious to ask you about, which I think is probably related to your second point, right? The support of small businesses is, of course, okay, I have to have a little bit of a build up here. In preparation, I had a list of questions that I sent over to Louise a few days ago, and I did a bit more prep this morning. And so what better way to prep than to go onto LinkedIn? And so I was on LinkedIn, I was looking at Louise's profile, and I noticed that there were a couple of pictures there that I hadn't really noticed before. And it's Louise, and she's in a very familiar setting, and she's shaking hands with somebody who I think everybody listening would recognize. And so, Louise, can you tell us a little bit more about what that picture was and what was going on there?
Yes. Oh my gosh. If anyone wants like the gory details, I recorded a whole episode about it on my podcast. So end of October last year, I got an email that I thought was a joke. So it was from the master of the household the master of ceremonies of the household of King Charles, inviting me to a reception to recognise small business and their contribution to the UK economy at Buckingham Palace.
I love it. And I can totally see how that would come as a shock if you weren't expecting it.
I went into my small business group, my UK small business group, and I said, did anybody else get a really special email today? And everybody was like, no, what did you get? What did you get? And I didn't want to say in case it was actually a joke. And then one person who leads the Small Business Britain group in the UK said, yes, I'll email you. And I went, oh my word, it's real. So a lot of back and forth. I was invited to a reception at Buckingham Palace with 400 other people who work within the small business economy.
Oh, isn't that exciting? I have goosebumps listening to this story. It's so cool.
So I went and bought like a fancy dress, flew to London, had to buy flights, hotel rooms and everything. But of course you do, because when do you ever get invited to Buckingham Palace? And so I got a nice dress. I went along. It was, pitch black. It was an evening reception. Pitch black, get to Buckingham Palace. Honestly, kind of terrified. And at the end of the queue, there is my friend, the only other person I know who's going. So thank heavens. So her and I went in together. And it's amazing. It's an amazing place. Their staff are just phenomenal. Like, if you imagine the fanciest hotel you've ever been to, how the staff treat you, it's like that. Nobody's allowed their phones, so you have to all check your phones in the cloakrooms. And they give us a little gold bag that says Buckingham Palace on it to put our phones into.
Wow. I love it.
Like a gold plastic bag, not like a gold bag.
I sort of had this image of like a real gold, like sort of like a red type of bag, but still, it's a gold bag.
And it does say Buckingham Palace on it, and you can take it away afterwards. Anyway, so we went upstairs, and we all had these tickets, and my ticket was pink. And I get upstairs to where you get your name badge, and there was no name badge for me. And I was like, oh, I knew this was wrong. I knew I wasn't supposed to be here. And I said to the girl, I said, all your tickets are blue and mine's pink. She's taking all the tickets off everybody. And I said, was I like a wee special add-on at the end of this event? And she said, let me just check with my colleague. And I'm standing there going, oh my God, I'm not meant to be here. So her colleague comes over and she says, no, you come with me. I've got your name badge over here. And we go through this amazing room. It's like the staterooms. It's just beautiful. In through these big, gigantic doors into this smaller room. And she says, your name badge is in here. And I'm just going, what? What's going on? And my friend was with me. And I just said to the lady, I said, could you please tell me what's happening? And she said, yes, absolutely. She says, you're meeting the king in a lineup before he enters the main room.
Wow.
And I was like, what? She says, yes, it's very exciting, isn't it? Come with me.
Oh, wow. So you had no idea flying over there that you were selected to meet the king. Amazing.
No. So we go into this other room, and the first thing happens is the butler comes over with a tray of champagne.
Wow.
And I take a glass of champagne, I take a sip of the champagne, and I went, oh, that's not going to work. Because my adrenaline is like firing through my entire body. I thought that's a really bad idea. So I set the champagne down. And then they just said, so the king's going to come in with Prince Edward and the Duke of Gloucester and the Duke of Kent. And, just relax. It's going to be you're going to enjoy this. And what was amazing, Paula, was the other people in the room were like household names in the UK. So there was, I don't know if you guys watch Dragon's Den, but BBC Dragon's Den, there's one of the dragons. There was a lady called Mary Portas, who is called Queen of Shops here in the UK. There was the CEO of the Starling Bank, which is a, £500 million bank. The head of the British Business Bank. Other people, I didn't know who they were. And then there's me.
Amazing.
Anyway, it was amazing. They were all just delightful, charming, delightful, genuinely interested in what we all had to say. They came in, they went down the line. My friend, so one of the news companies was there. All the media were at the end of the room videoing us all, and everything was mad. And somebody uploaded a video onto Yahoo News, and my friend, who's a video whiz, downloaded it for me. So I uploaded it onto my LinkedIn company page, so you can literally watch it and see how excited I am. I'm like literally jumping around in this queue. And they were lovely, and they all shook my hand and asked me about my business. I have no idea what I said. The king, literally no idea. I remember saying to him, and I came over from Belfast, I'm from Northern Ireland, because if you're from Northern Ireland, which is tiny, you always have to say, I'm from Northern Ireland. And he says, oh, well, it's wonderful. And I think there's a few of you here today from Northern Ireland. And that was it. That's all I remember him saying to me. Yes, it was amazing. And then after, he kind of continued down the line, and the staff just kind of took us, like almost like gently took us and like pushed us back out into the main room. We stood there and went, what the heck was that? Because none of us really knew. And the people who were well known, when they arrived, they knew, because they had personal escorts up to this room, because they're recognizable. You know, they're famous on TV here, but nobody knew what I looked like.
Isn't that amazing?
So anyway, it was an amazing experience. Yes, it was fabulous.
Wow. Louise, I was already honored that you were coming onto the podcast, and now it's like you're royalty.
Yeah, I've got my picture of me of the king on my shelf.
I can see in the background. There you are. Beautiful. Beautiful. That is such a fabulous story. And I love how you tell it. And I love that you didn't know, right? That this was just something, I mean, surreal. It just is amazing. So, and good for you.
And after I came out, Paula, after the 2 hours, lots of champagne, and I came outside, and I'm outside the palace, and I have my phone back, and I phoned all of my family.
I bet.
And my big sister said to me, I'm not surprised in the least.
Wow. What a lovely response.
I know. So anyway.
Beautiful. Well, it's a recognition of all the work that you've been doing. So
yes.
Love it. Good for you. Good for you. Wow. Okay. LinkedIn. How do we get back to LinkedIn? That is amazing. And I will watch the video. I almost clicked on it this morning, but it was quite early and I didn't want to wake anybody else up in my house. But amazing. Glad that we can watch this unfold. I would love to know, sorry, I'm still totally just thinking about your story in your business. We talked about, and you run a small business. I also run a small business. A lot of our listeners are in, I would say, a range of firms, right? Anywhere from a sole practice to, multinational law firm. And so there's such a range. And I think for all of us, thinking of ourselves as business owners, whether we are true business owners or whether we're operating independently within an organization, I think it really does help to have that sense of purpose and to have that sense of, having your own mission statement, right? What are you trying to do within your professional work? And so I'm so glad you're here. I feel like we could have a whole other podcast episode on the small business friend, looking in particular at the LinkedIn portion of it. I would love to know, because you have started out and your practice has evolved, how it is that you went and arrived at a place where LinkedIn has become the focal point of the work that you do.
Oh, yes. So it's quite easy, really. A lot of us, when we start our own business, someone says to you, if you specialize, you will get more business. And you think, oh, but if I only talk to that single group of people, am I not missing out on all this other work over here? And it's a fear that people have. And I absolutely have it and had it. And I think one of the best things I did, Paula, was I invested in a coach who mentored me and encouraged me and probably pushed and challenged me on niching down. And I always describe myself as like, I'm not a speedboat zipping around the waves. I am a slow moving tanker. Yep. So to change direction in something, I have to think about it. Yeah. And I have to kind of ruminate on it, and then I'll test it out slowly. And one of the things I say to a lot of people, and this applies to you trying out LinkedIn or trying out talking about particular things on LinkedIn, is give something 90 days and see if you like it and feel comfortable in it and if it's a good fit for you. So I dabbled in, let's just go with LinkedIn. So my online content was all about LinkedIn. But if I got a call locally, could you come and do a workshop on social media, Louise? I would say yes, because then I was like, oh, I don't want to lose that traction and I don't lose that income, actually. But when I decided to niche down LinkedIn, there's two reasons. Number one, I was convinced enough of the niching as a strategy. I was convinced. I'd read enough around it to think, well, all of these experts can't be wrong. So I think niching down into a particular area is something I should give it a go. But in terms of social media, when I looked at my presence on different social media platforms, the time I spent on LinkedIn converted into closer connections and into money and business far more quickly than it did on other channels. So I used to be a Facebook and Instagram representative in the UK on a program they have called She Means Business. And I would run local networking events for Facebook here in Northern Ireland. And I just realized that, to build a presence on Instagram or Facebook, well, Facebook is, this is 5 years ago, Facebook's a different landscape completely now. But say to build a presence on Instagram, you have to really spend a lot of time on there. Whereas on LinkedIn, and what we do, this is what we do with our clients, you can post twice a week and have a really solid presence and impact with your network. And the people on LinkedIn, for those of us who work in the professional sphere, that's who that network is. Whereas on some other channel, you're mixing in friends and family and people who are just there for fun. And, when we pick up our phones and we open up Instagram, we're not going there to connect with a business coach or mentor. Maybe some people are, but most people aren't. But when you open up your LinkedIn account, you're really there to connect with your fellow professionals or your potential clients. I mean, it is a business/professional social media channel. That's what it is. But also, this might sound a bit cheeky to some people. If you connect with somebody on LinkedIn as a potential client, they probably have more money in their pocket for your products and services than the people you connect with on Instagram.
It's so fascinating. I love your response. There's a couple of things that I think are very relatable to our listeners. And the first is that concept of niching. And that's something that I have heard as well after going out on my own and developing my practice as a coach, this concept of working with a very specific niche of people. And so like you, there's that initial questioning of it, right? Like, does that really work? And I've had a similar experience in terms of my practice, being able to work particularly with lawyers. I think that you're able to then speak to that person a lot more clearly. You understand the problems more deeply. And so there really is something to that. And I think for lawyers who are looking at their practice and maybe not necessarily even niching, but just narrowing the scope, right? Really identifying what they love and then leaning into that. I think that's a really neat takeaway. And the other point is I think LinkedIn, as you mentioned, it's really a social platform for professionals. And so it's so much more efficient. If you're looking to connect with other professionals, you'd have to filter through a lot more people on something like an Instagram or a Facebook, whereas LinkedIn is really dedicated to professional services. And so I think it's just a faster way to meet people who are in your professional spheres. So I love that. In your practice, so you've got professional services, and now you're doing this series where you're focusing specifically on lawyers and law firms. So niching almost even further. And so I would love to know what it was that drew you to working more closely with lawyers and law firms in your practice.
It's probably not the answer people expect. When the pandemic hit, for a lot of people listening who run their own businesses or their own practices, may have had a similar experience, or maybe not actually. But basically, when the pandemic hit, all of my clients, I was listening to something yesterday, someone says, don't use the term freak out. It's not appropriate. But a lot of people drew up the drawbridge. I went, can't spend any money. All the offices are shut down. We need to let you go. So that happened probably for me, I would say the February, March in 2020. And what was interesting was before the pandemic, I had done quite a few presentations and workshops for the Law Society here in Northern Ireland. So I had met, and for the barristers in Northern Ireland, the Bar of NI, I did a big talk with them. And barristers, interestingly, not a lot of them now, to be honest. A lot of people who came to that workshop didn't even have a smartphone or mobile phone. But some of them did and were very forward thinking. And when the pandemic hit, it was barristers who reached out to me to hire me because of that previous connection. And one was a QC, now a KC, of course. And he said to me, Louise, all the courts are closed. My mind likes to be busy. So I'm thinking, what can I do? Oh, I might reach out to Louise. Honestly, my first 2 or 3 clients that kicked back up with me after the start of the pandemic were in the law. So that's partly empathy is my highest strength in Strengths Finder. So there's something there about emotional connections with people. But also, people might think, oh, is niching down to LinkedIn not enough? But actually, one of the reasons for niching for me into doing a whole section about law firms right now, you can get really, really specific. It's very easy for me to create content to speak to one audience. And I've done a lot of work with local solicitors or lawyers and barristers to know quite a lot about how they operate and how they want to view LinkedIn and what the issues and concerns they have about using LinkedIn as well. But saying to myself, right, I'm going to focus on creating some content specifically for law firms was really quite easy for me. So I wrote like the ultimate guide to LinkedIn for law firms and how lawyers can raise their profiles on LinkedIn. And I thought, well, the next section is for me, because I have a podcast that's just like 220 episodes old. I thought, right, I'm going to do a little series that's specifically for law firms. So there's a lot of lawyers out there in the world, and there's a lot of lawyers who want to know how to use LinkedIn. So if they go to Google and type in, how can our law firm use LinkedIn? There's not a lot of results that are of good quality. And I'm not blowing my own trumpet. My other thing I'll do when I'm 75 is probably keep writing, because I love writing like really in-depth how-to guides for things. And I just like writing anyway. But I wrote lots of articles for Social Media Examiner as well during the pandemic. Actually, they were another like little lifeline. But I really enjoy creating that kind of content. And it's I put effort into it. So it's good quality content. And if you look for how to use LinkedIn for law firms, there's not going to be thousands and thousands of blogs written about that on the internet. So having a good experience with local law firms and barristers and having lots of really nice lawyers in my network, I thought, well, let's try niching further and see where that leads me. So I'm actually speaking at a conference for lawyers in Edinburgh in Scotland at the start of March. So it's for Pan-European Personal Injury Lawyers Conference for lawyers under 40. Very excited about it. And once you decide to niche into a specific area, doors open for you. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And one of the takeaways that I have from what you just mentioned is it's not just niching into any area. Sometimes it's niching into an area that is not yet really discovered, right? There's this need that has opened up, right? I think social media is, relatively new. If we're looking at the legal profession as a whole, right? It's a relatively new thing. How we use social media, I think, changes. I think your reference to the pandemic is a great one, because I think that's when so many of us shifted. If we were already online, we were really online as of February, March 2020. And so our opportunities to connect in person were way fewer. And all of a sudden, LinkedIn became a true platform for connection. And for myself, it was a gateway to meeting professionals all over the world, people who I never would have had the courage to reach out to. All of a sudden, we were on this level playing field, and it was a wonderful way to connect. And so for lawyers at all different stages, right? how they view, and for our listeners to think about how they are engaging with social media. When I was at a big law firm, I had a LinkedIn account. I didn't really use it because I didn't really think I needed to use it. Whereas now it's a regular part of my professional work. I love being on there. I'm probably like the people that you work with. I go on about twice a week, probably in a meaningful way. I'll check it from time to time, but it's a way that I learn about people. It's a way that I stay connected. This morning I was on there preparing for today, and I saw, people getting promoted to partner and interesting articles and other podcast episodes that are going out. And so it's just a really good way to stay in touch. And I think for you being niched into that area and being able to speak specifically to lawyers to understand what it is that they are able to get from LinkedIn that they might not even know about, you're creating so much value. And that leads to our next question, Louise, which is, I'd love to know what kind of ways you and your clients used LinkedIn. What are some of the reasons why someone who maybe is just thinking about it or is already there, but is looking for new creative ways to use LinkedIn? What would you suggest? What kind of work do you do with the lawyers that you work with?
So what's interesting, and this is not just lawyers, this is most people on LinkedIn, is that very few people ever post anything on LinkedIn. So there's 850 million users plus 60 million company pages plus, maybe more now. And apparently, and I totally believe this, only 1% of those people post anything on LinkedIn in any given month for lots of reasons. They don't have time. They don't know what to say. They don't know why they should post on it. They worry about, if I post something about this story, will I get into trouble? What will my colleagues think? So they just don't post. They go on, they read stuff, they click the like button, and then they go, oh, okay, job done my LinkedIn this week, and move on. And that's really missing a massive opportunity. So one of the things I love to do with people, the whole business is the done for you service, but some people will hire me for a one-off on how to write your profile properly and how, there's two sessions. One to do, we do the profile together. And the second session is, here's how to actually use LinkedIn. And one of the things I love to show people is just writing a post about the industry that you work in once or twice a week, not coming at it from a place of, I know everything and I'm going to show off about myself and my abilities and my skills, but coming at it from a place of being of service to the audience. Here's an interesting story. I thought you'd like to hear about it because of X, Y, Z, and starting conversations with your audience. It's literally like sending a rocket up your profile in terms of visibility with your network. And depending on where you are in your career, if you are a solo practitioner or you are working in a multinational, gigantic law firm and you want to get noticed, it's really simple to do because nobody else is doing it. Say you work in commercial law, right? So you work commercial law and you work, now I'm going to make a fool of myself here and try and pick Canadian geography. So say I'm in Toronto, working in a big multinational law firm, and I am really ambitious, right? So I'm a woman in my 30s. I'm super ambitious. I want to be partner level within so many years. Maybe I already am partner, who knows? And in Toronto. So a way to get really you want to start connecting with other professionals and companies in Toronto. You're a commercial lawyer. Who are all the clients who are on your company's client list? I know that's not the right term.
It's okay. I don't know.
Friday night here.
Roster?
It's Friday night here. Right, yeah.
Who sounds good to me.
Who are the clients who hire our firm? Yeah. So start following those companies' LinkedIn company pages. If one of your clients is Microsoft, because that's an easy one to pick, right? Nobody listening is going to say, you can't talk about Microsoft. If you look at the posts that are going on the Toronto Microsoft page, I could put money on it right now that very few people are commenting on any of their content. So a really easy way for you to be seen by your current and existing clients, or people that, if you went to your managing partner and said, I think I've got a meeting with this firm next week, and your manager looks at you in a new light. The easiest way to do that is to get noticed by that client. And then a really simple way to do that is to go to their company page or go to their company page, comment on some of their content, but also click on the people tab on that company page and filter by people who work at this company, who work in Toronto, and go and look at their profiles. Find something you can connect over. Maybe you went to the same university. Maybe they've just posted an article. They've just shared a newspaper clip about something that's happening in the Toronto area. Comment on it and then send that person a connection request. And just do that really slowly and steadily and start building up your network. And your visibility is just going to leap because nobody else is doing that. You know, when you look at a post on LinkedIn and it's maybe, somebody's written a post about something on LinkedIn and it's a really great story. And you go and you look at how many people have commented on this story and how many people have clicked the like button. So it's a really great story. You might have 30 people have clicked the like button and probably 1 or 2 people have commented on it. If you can comment on that post, then the people who see that post and see the comments, they see your photograph, they see your name, and they see your headline, as well as your thoughtfully written comment. The people who click the like button, whether it's like or celebrate or support, nobody sees their names or their headlines or even their photographs. So it's so simple to get noticed on LinkedIn if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I love that. And I like your approach too, Louise. I'm sort of going back to that analogy that you had with the steamer and the speedboat. And I'm getting the words all confused, but to me, it really is a slow and steady, right? I think being on LinkedIn, any social platform, any social situation, really, I think there's so much value in that slow and steady approach.
Yes.
Looking at what other people are doing and recognizing their work and celebrating their wins, right? It's no different than being in a room full of regular people in person, right? You want to go in there and have the same social etiquette that you would if you were dealing with them sort of IRL in real life. And so I really think that your approach speaks to that. And I agree with what you're saying. I think, the numbers speak for themselves, that there's relatively few people who are posting and commenting. And I think it really is a way to get noticed in a positive way because, I post on social media and I think, they talk about people getting really hooked on the are people liking, are people commenting? And I'm not obsessive about it, but I certainly notice if somebody comments on a post and they like the post, I appreciate it, right? It makes me feel good.
Yes.
Like, okay, this message resonated because as we now know, 1% of people are posting, everyone else might be looking. But if the people posting don't have any feedback, they don't know whether or not it's engaging, right? They may see numbers of views or something, but they don't know that it's landing with people unless they have that actual response. So I think it's just a really lovely, gentle way almost of building up a rapport, a relationship with people, which ultimately I think is the goal, right? You're wanting to connect with other humans using this particular platform.
To me, if you look at LinkedIn and think this is a platform for building a genuine and valuable network of people that I want to hear from, they like what I'm saying, and we are building relationships together. If you look at it like that, I think that can hopefully trigger a little mindset shift in how to approach it.
Yeah, I think that's right. Louise, one of the reasons we've just talked about in terms of LinkedIn, why we might be there, is to connect with other professionals. What are some of the reasons that you would offer for being on LinkedIn as a platform?
Ooh. So my analogy for LinkedIn, I don't think I've told you this, Paula.
I'm excited to hear it. So is everybody else.
So look at LinkedIn as an online version of your favorite industry conference, right? So if there's one conference a year that you want to attend, approach LinkedIn as you would approach that conference. So you're going to the conference because there's people there that you already know in your professional career that you want to see and connect with. There are going to be speakers at that conference that you're interested to hear. And you're going to plan in advance. Who do I want to see there? Who am I interested in connecting with, who I haven't met yet, who I think might be going? Who are the speakers that I'm going to go and listen to? So that is you going to LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the conference. The people that you want to touch base with are the people that you go to LinkedIn and you see their posts because you've been commenting on them. The algorithm shows you the stuff from the people you already know. There's the new people that you're going to meet at the conference. You might not know yet that you're going to meet them. They're the people that if I comment on Paula's post on LinkedIn and somebody else comments below and I see their headline, I think, oh, I love what she said. I'll send her a connection request. That's the new person I meet at the conference that I give my business card to. The speakers at the conference are the thought leaders who are on LinkedIn that when you go, you always read their posts or you watch their videos because they're interesting. And, at this conference we're at, you go into the room to hear that speaker and everybody else in that room wants to hear that speaker too. So everyone else commenting under that person's post is probably in a similar mindset to you. So that's my analogy. LinkedIn is treat it like it is your favorite industry conference. You're going to meet new people. You're going to hear new stuff. You're going to hear from the people you enjoy hearing from. You're going to reconnect with the people that you already have met. And that's where I think LinkedIn is different, because you go to your industry conference, a lot of it is strategy. Whereas if you just went to, let's think of a non-industry conference type event, you just went to Disney World. Everyone else there is having a great time, but you're not going to be making business connections, are you? In the queue for coffee at Disney World that you are in the queue for coffee at the conference.
I think it's brilliant. And it reminds me of a quasi in real life analogy. I'm in a course right now, and I asked a question during one of the course sessions, and I didn't know this, but in the class was another person who coaches lawyers and was interested in this particular topic. And so after the conference, she reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, I saw you raised your hand. You asked this question. And so LinkedIn is really almost like an industry event. It's almost like a classroom too, right? Where, you see one person asking a question and all of a sudden you're really interested, right? You might get really interested by somebody's comment on somebody else's post, and that might lead you to making another connection. So I think it is really great to look at it as, this virtual representation of something that we may also be doing in real life. Louise, one of your podcast episodes, so I've listened to some of your series on LinkedIn for lawyers, and one of them was talking about making connections with others. And I really loved the approach that you were taking. And I'd love to ask you what some of your recommended approaches are when you are looking to connect with people on LinkedIn.
Okay. So this is very timely because I have a client who's starting with us next month, and he has never really used LinkedIn. He's got about 120 connections. And he said to me, Louise, I got blocked by LinkedIn for making too many connection requests. And I thought, oh, this is why we need to work together now. So I could give you this advice. So I am very much of the frame of mind that you should build up your network on LinkedIn in a slow and steady way. So connect with people who are interesting or will be interested in you. That's first thing. Don't just connect with anybody and everybody. And when you connect with somebody, always send a message to say why you're connecting with them. A lot of us will go to our networks and say you go to LinkedIn once a week, because you're busy and you're doing all this other stuff. And you may be listening to this thinking, oh, maybe I'll give LinkedIn a go. And you go to your profile and you're like, oh my Lord, there's like 31 connection requests there. And you'll see them all, and you'll see maybe 3 of them have left a message, and some of them will be, they want to sell you software. So I just don't accept those people. I'm like, ignore. It says ignore or accept. I think you need better language, but I have no interest in building up a network of people who are trying to sell B2B software, because when they post about their software that I don't want to buy, that's not very interesting for me to read in my newsfeed. So I'm never going to engage with it. They are not looking to outsource their LinkedIn to me or learn about LinkedIn, which is the content that I share on LinkedIn. So they're never going to comment on my stuff either. So what's the point in us connecting? That's the guy that you meet at the conference and you're like, oh, it's really nice to meet you. All the best, cheerio. And you think, like, we didn't even exchange business cards, or I threw his business card in the bin when I got home because I'm not interested. So connect with people in a genuine, authentic way. Why do you actually want to have this person in your network? You know, is it because you saw them on a webinar, or you read about them in a journal, or your friend said, oh, I think you should talk to such and such. I think you get on really well. Or you saw their comment on something else on LinkedIn, or you went to your local business networking event and you met 10 people there, and 3 of them, you just kind of gelled with them and you liked who they were as a person. So you connect with them on LinkedIn and say, hey, it was nice to meet you at that networking event this morning. Let's connect here. Because then what happens then is when you go to LinkedIn, you enjoy being on there because your newsfeed is full of posts from people who are sharing stuff you're interested in. That is as simple as I can make it. A lot of other people who do I do, Paula, will have 100,000 connections or followers on LinkedIn. I have a lot. I've nearly 9,000. Remember, 1% of them are posting. But also I unfollow a lot of people because when I go to LinkedIn, I'm a very sociable person. I like engaging on posts and reading stuff that's interesting to me. So I don't want my network full of people who are talking about something that I, it's wonderful what they're talking about, but I'm not really interested in reading about it or engaging with it. So it's much better to have a small but mighty network, if you like.
Oh, I love that. Small but mighty. Louise, it's funny. I have never drawn the connection between who you accept as a friend or whatever you call a connection on LinkedIn and the quality of your newsfeed. I've never drawn that link, and how when you curate the people who make up your network, you're also curating what appears on your feed. And you're so right, because I love going into my LinkedIn feed. I actually really enjoy it when I'm there. And now you've helped me understand why, because like you, and I feel terrible when I get a request and I see the invitation and I just have no understanding of how this person and I would have, like if we were in real life, would we have anything in common to talk about? Probably not. And I think they should rename that ignore button, because I never want to click it. So I just kind of leave them in that sort of no man's land. You're not a connection, but I don't want to ignore you either, because that would be rude. So it's, oh my goodness. But you're absolutely right. Like being intentional about who you're bringing into your network. And I cleared this, everyone listening, I cleared this before Louise and I hit the record button, but Louise had such a great email. So we met on LinkedIn. She reached out to me, and I'm going to read the message because I found it this morning as I was preparing. And I thought this is a really good example of a message that I wanted to respond to. So she said, hi, Paula, I found you via Amy's post. Now, Amy, she's referring to Amy Group, who had recently posted, I can't remember what she posted about, but we were both on there saying something about it, which again goes to show, right? The comments that you make on somebody else's post might be seen by somebody who then has something in common with you. Special shout out to Amy Group. Amy was on the podcast earlier. She was talking with Ashley Sire about having a small business, like creating a small solo practice, which has been a very popular episode. And totally by coincidence, this morning when I logged on to LinkedIn, I saw that Amy had recorded a podcast episode herself with The Lawyerist on this very topic about LinkedIn for lawyers. And so it was funny. I sent her a note and she wrote back and said, hey, you'll never guess, I'm having a podcast interview with Louise this morning. And so it became this really funny thing. And we've all been talking about it. She's like, oh, you have to ask Louise about meeting King Charles. I was like, got it. It's on the outline. And so just goes to show, right? Not only the connections that you make with people on LinkedIn, also that LinkedIn for lawyers is a topic that people are talking about. So if you're listening, you're in the right place. And so that was just really fun. So already going back to what Louise wrote to me, I found you via Amy's post. So already I knew that we knew somebody in common, which is of course nice because I love Amy. And so I thought I'll probably love Louise as well. And turns out Louise is amazing on so many levels, including helping me with my parenting. So I run a boutique LinkedIn marketing agency. LinkedIn, great. I am on LinkedIn. She's on LinkedIn. We have that in common. Focusing on professional services, currently doing a season of podcasts. Well, that ding, 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 what we're doing right now. We're recording a podcast. I'm obviously interested in podcasting on LinkedIn for law firms. And of course, I'm working with lawyers. And so all these are points of purchase that show me that Louise and I probably have something in common. We could probably have a chat. Then she follows on, would be good to chat with you. Oh, that's just what I was thinking. Maybe discuss guesting. Oh, that's a great idea because I'm always looking for wonderful people to bring onto the podcast. She's talking about her podcast. And so my podcast is LinkedIn with Louise XX. So I read Louise's message and I was immediately intrigued. I thought I'd love to have a chance to speak with Louise. And so I'd never met her before. I hadn't seen any of her posts on LinkedIn. Like this was sort of, I don't know, Louise, please forgive me. I'm going to call it a cold call because in the sense,
it was
email. We had no previous interactions with each other. But because her message, it was clear, it was direct, it was to the point, it was friendly, it wasn't overly formal. There was somebody, we mentioned somebody in common, and I was absolutely immediately interested. And then what that led to, again, going to the power of LinkedIn, was we set up a call. We spoke on Zoom, and I could tell just within, I don't know, seconds really of speaking with Louise, I thought I'd love to have her on as a guest. I mean, you're listening, you hear how amazing she is. And so it's just the power of the way that you can use this platform to connect with people. And I wanted to read out that message because it just goes to show that's the kind of message that people are going to respond to. And so as Louise was saying, if you're going to an industry event and you want to speak to certain speakers or colleagues that you're going to reconnect with or whoever it happens to be, chances are it's because you have a mutual interest. And so when you base your connections on what we have in common, it leads to, as we now know, a better feed. You're going to have more fun on your platform and true, genuine connections. So thank you so much for that, Louise. And thank you for everyone for listening. I have a question for you, Louise. This has been a burning question on my mind for months now. What is the difference between connecting and following?
I have a video about this on YouTube.
Beautiful. And we'll link to it in the show notes. So go to the website and find this episode. You'll find all the links.
So LinkedIn brought out a new personal profile mode might be 18 months ago now, called LinkedIn Creator. Now, with my Belfast accent, LinkedIn Creator. Okay. So with the idea that more people, because they know people aren't posting stuff on LinkedIn, to encourage people to come to LinkedIn to create content, to write posts, to make videos, to do LinkedIn audios, which doesn't really happen very much anymore, but to create content. So you turn on LinkedIn creator mode on your profile. So you have your ordinary LinkedIn profile, and then there's something that says, would you like to turn on creator mode? When you turn on creator mode, several things happen. It asks you to tell them 5 topics you're going to create your content on. So what do you want to be known for? So it could be women in law. And you write whatever hashtag you want. It's your words. So it could be women in law, Canadian lawyers, podcasts for lawyers, whatever the 5 things you want to write are. And you can write 2 things, but you can write up to 5. You also then, depending on how many followers you have, you get access to writing a LinkedIn personal newsletter, which is a much longer form of content, like a blog almost, that people subscribe to. You also, then your connect button changes to become follow. So if you go to someone's profile and it says follow, and it used to say, Louise prefers people to follow her. And I'm like, no, I don't. I much prefer connections, but turning on LinkedIn creator mode automatically put that on there. So it changes your connect button to follow. If you want to connect with that person and not just follow them, and I'll tell you what the difference between the two is in a sec, go to the right-hand side of the follow button, and there's a wee button with 3 little dots. Click on the 3 little dots. A pop-up menu appears, and on that it says, on desktop, it says personalize invite, or maybe that's on mobile. Anyway, it says 2 different things on mobile and desktop. It either says connect or it says personalize invite. And you click on those, you can then connect with that person and add a note to say where you're connecting. When you follow someone, you are not connected to them. So you are following their content, but they are not following your content. When you connect with someone, they are also able to see your content. So when we connect to each other, we are going to be shown each other's content. Content being what you post on LinkedIn. If I am following you, but we're not connected, I will see your posts, but you will not see mine. It's like kind of building up LinkedIn's equivalent of influencers, I suppose. So someone who wants to have, like Richard Branson or Oprah Winfrey, have millions of followers on LinkedIn. They don't actually want to have personal one-to-one conversations with lots of people in their network. Whereas I do, actually. I love people sending me messages. Like I got somebody today sent me a message. I think we connected a few years ago. I don't remember her because she never posts or comments on my stuff. But she heard someone talking about me in a webinar this morning and she sent me a little voice message on LinkedIn. And I thought it was really nice. And it's a nice, easy way to touch base with somebody. But that's the difference between follow and connect. That's how you turn on the follow button. It's how you get around the follow button to connect. It's what happens when someone's following you versus they're connected to you.
Beautiful. That is such a helpful explanation. And as you were talking, at some point I switched over and I don't even remember doing it. When you said, you have 5 places where you can put what you're going to talk about, I'm like, I don't think I ever did that. So anyways, but I think it's nice to be able to follow or connect. And now we know the difference, right? If you want to follow somebody, so I follow people on LinkedIn, some people follow me, some people connect with me. Is it the same? Do you have yours set to, are you creator or you, what's your setting? Sorry, am I allowed to ask you this? Is this personal?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Is this personal
of course. No, it's absolutely fine. So weirdly, because I'm on top of these things as soon as they come out, because I create videos on things as they come out, put them on YouTube. When it first came out, I was able to switch my button back to connect.
Okay.
For about a year, but I think it's back to follow now. I think they updated it without letting me have say in it. But for a while, it was my button was connect, even though I had LinkedIn Creator mode turned on. But so mine is, I have LinkedIn Creator because I want access to the newsletter and the 5 hashtags. That's really kind of the main reason. Oh, it also rearranges your profile. So when someone looks at your LinkedIn profile, your about section drops down below your activity. And when I look at your activity, if you have Creator turned on, it's the last 5 posts you made that I see. If you do not have Creator turned on, it's the last 5 actions you took on LinkedIn. So that could literally be Louise liked this post, Louise liked this post, Louise liked this post. So the focus with Creator is on what you created rather than what you did on LinkedIn. So there's quite a few things to it. If you just go to YouTube and type in Louise Brogan, LinkedIn Creator, it walks you through every single thing that you need to know about and see. But the other thing is, Paula, a nice way to clean up your network without removing connections is you can unfollow people but stay connected to them. So when you look at your news feed and you think, oh, I'd like a news feed like Paula and Louise where they say they actually like what they see on LinkedIn. You go to LinkedIn and you're being shown these posts and you're like, oh, I don't really want to know about fly fishing or about, I don't know, B2B software in Australia. You go to the top right-hand corner of that post, click on the 3 little dots again and just say unfollow. And there's loads of options, but one of them will be unfollow the person or the company. And you do that. You could sit and do it for a day, but you'd be bored out of your mind. But every time you go to LinkedIn, just unfollow the stuff you're not interested in. And gradually your newsfeed will start to clean up and you're going to see content from the people that you want to see. The other way to do that is comment on the posts from the people you want to see content from. LinkedIn knows you're interested in that person and will show you their next post.
Beautiful. These are such helpful tips. I'm so sad because I think we've kind of reached our time for today. And I'm sad. I'm sure everyone listening is sad. Before we wrap up, Louise, it has been such a pleasure. Seriously, this whole conversation has been amazing. And so thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And for anybody who is listening and who wants to learn more about you, about the work that you do, how do we find you? On LinkedIn, I'm guessing.
On LinkedIn
is one of the places. So
yes. So, my website is very simple. It's louisebrogan.com. But I'll send you the link, Paula, to that ultimate guide to LinkedIn for law firms.
Oh, maybe fabulous. We can put a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then YouTube. It's LinkedIn with Louise on YouTube, podcasting, and on LinkedIn and Instagram. It's just Louise Brogan. Beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Louise. Are there any last words before we wrap up? Sorry, that was kind of an abrupt, oh gosh, we're out of time.
No, I've really enjoyed myself. It's Friday night here and I'm like,
I'm buzzing. Yeah.
a great way to head into my weekend.
Thank you for making time for us before Friday night. It's you look very refreshed for somebody who's at the end of their work week. So good for you. And thank you again for coming on. And just like I want to say congratulations again, right? Just going back to that initial story and all the work that you're doing in your business and also the work that you're doing to support other businesses. It's truly incredible. And it's been such an honor having you here today. So thank you. And thank you so much for being here. And thank you everyone who joined us today. I hope you enjoyed listening to this interview as much as I enjoyed having the chance to speak with Louise. So take care, everybody, and we'll connect again next week. If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to miss an episode, subscribe and follow the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you haven't already, please leave a rating and review. Your feedback will help me create a podcast that's tailored to your needs and goes straight to the heart of what matters to you. For instructions on how to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast, visit www.thejoyfulpractice.com/podcast launch. See you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. If you want more information, visit www.thejoyfulpractice.com. See you next week.